to thank sponsors. I want to thank our sponsors, the Bermuda Tourism Authority, Gosling's Rum, and GMT Composites. We're very happy to have them on board supporting us in this webinar series. So as some of the people, probably everybody that's on this call will know by now, the notice of race for the 2022 race has been posted on bermudarace.com. And we have with us Andrew Kalfes, who's in charge of the entry process for the race. And he is going to hopefully handily take us through how you can enter the Newport to Bermuda race using the Sailgate system, which for new people might be a new system to use and they may never have seen it before. Andrew, how easy is it? And take us through, give us a rundown of the Sailgate system and how people can enter our race.
Very well, I'll do that. Thanks, Somers, for that. And excited that we're going to be opening on Friday at 1300 Eastern. You'll be able to click through from our portal right into the entry system and enter for the race. So with that, I'm going to give you like a mock tour of it because the actual entry system's not open. So we'll be doing it in a little bit of a sandbox that looks almost identical to the site you'll see on Friday when you go enter. I'm going to share my screen here so you can see what I'm doing, and I'll walk through the process as though you were a new entrant to Bermuda Race. For those of you who have entered before using Sailgate, so anyone who entered in 2016, 2018, or entered in 2020, you will already have an account. Whether you've changed boats or not, if you already have an account as a skipper, you should use those credentials. Don't create an account, just go to Sailgate and use the same credentials you already had and sign in. That's useful for two reasons. One is you don't want to have to create a duplicate account and reload all your boat information, which will show up as a duplicate boat. But the second thing is, if you did enter in 2020 and you paid your deposit and you have a credit, you'll find it in that account. And if you create a new account, you will not find your deposit credit. So please use your credentials if you already have them to sign in.
So Andrew, the credentials that you speak of, that's going to be like an email that they originally used to create a Sailgate account, for instance. Yes?
That's right. Typically, your Sailgate credentials will be, your username will be an email address that you used at some point.
Right.
And if you forgot what that might be, you could try an email address and hit forgot password and recover your password until you find the email address that you did use. I encourage you to
look back into your email history and see all those Sailgate emails that have flooded in over the past year. Okay.
Great idea. Okay, I'm going to share here and jump to the my web browser so you can see what I'm seeing. So you should see a Newport Bermuda Race homepage. So on Friday, you'll be able to view this page. We can view this page now, and you can click on Entry Portal to get to the entry page. Now, this is where if you're an entrant, you go to the captain's portal. If you're a crew member, you could go to the crew member portal. Crew members can create accounts, but they're not going to be able to sign up for a race. They're going to be invited by you later in the process. So I wouldn't direct your crew to this page yet. In fact, you don't have to direct your crew to go to Sailgate independently. There's a process where you'll create a crew list and you'll invite them, and those email invitations will be the process by which they sign up and join your crew. Before I jump into the Sailgate portal itself, I just want to highlight there's an entry checklist on this page, which gives you a sort of a step-by-step approach of all the things you need to consider as you go through the entry process. Today, we're going to really be talking about just the top 3 items, which are really what Sailgate's all about. So with that, imagine clicking on Captain's Portal, you'd go to a page that looks something like this. So you would end up here, and if you have credentials, you'd put them in where it says log into Sailgate. If you don't have an account already, you'd click on Create Account. I'll click on Create Account. It's pretty basic. You'd fill in this information. You'll be reminded again many times about not having your phone number in the correct format. So use country code plus and country code for all email or for all phone numbers. Click next after you've completed this, and you will go through a validation process where you have to validate that you were able to receive a confirmation email. It's a very important process to do because, one, you can't create an account without it, and two, we use your email address to communicate with you a lot through the SailGate system. So once you've created your account, you'll then be able to sign in. I'm going to go back to that sign in page and actually just click log in. You now use your created credentials to log in. At this point, you'd come to a page that looks something like this. If you're a new entrant, the first thing you would want to do is add a boat, because without a boat, you can't enter a race. So if you don't have any boats added, for those who are already entrants in our platform, you likely have a boat. It may not be the boat you currently have, in which case you're going to need to click on boats. And if these boats are no longer part of your account, you'd have to create add a boat, or click on add a boat and add your boat details. For those who are new, you won't have any boats in here, so you will have to click add a boat. And when you add a boat, there's a couple of ways to go about this. One is you can add your data from scratch, meaning pull it off of whatever information you might have. Later on, the data will get updated with your certificate information. But the best way to do this is look it up by IRC or ORC or ORR certificate. And the instructions here are pretty clear. And if you follow the instructions and you have an existing certificate for your boat, a lot of the data is likely to already be existing in SailGate and will already be pre-populated for you. So I encourage you to use one of these three methods, IRC, ORC, or ORR, to create your boat data. If not, if you don't have any of those certificates, you can click manual and you'll be asked to fill in manual information about your boat, basic dimensional information as well. I'm not going to go through that process right now. I'm going to cancel and go back, and I'm not going to add a boat. I already have boats in here, but once you have a boat in your system, then you can go ahead and enter a race. So you could click on races, and on Friday, this listing will show up in races. If you happen to go in and create an account prior to Friday and add your boat prior to Friday, you might go to races and you will not see anything there because we're not open until 1300 on Friday. But as of 1300 on Friday, you'll see the Newport Bermuda race pop up. You can then click on that and click enter race. I should point out, I'm going to cancel this for a moment. I should point out that you're going to want to choose the boat. If you only have one boat entered, you should only see one boat in your list. It may be blank at first, in which case when you click on enter race, you're not going to get any action. You need to go and make sure that the boat you entered or the boat you want to enter in the race is selected here. In this case, Saphir is already selected, so I was able to just click enter race. You will see then the divisions, and the division information will be applicable to the boat that you had already entered in your profile. So for instance, you'll see that multi-hull, super yacht, and spirit of tradition are not available entries based on the physical data that I entered for my boat, although these divisions are. So you can select your division. We encourage you to take the time to select the division you're most likely to actually race in, because changing divisions is a little bit complicated later in the process. So in this case, I'm going to enter St. David's Lighthouse Division, and you can see the fee information here. And here you select, are you going to be sailing with full crew or you're going to sail double-handed? In this case, not allowed for this race. So I'm going to agree to the notice of race, and I'm going to enter. Now we've initiated the entry, and there's a couple of instructions here that you can read. You also get a confirmation email at this point. So now I've entered this race, and now if I click on this again, I will see live entry status. So once I've entered the race, I now have an entry status, sort of a dashboard of where you are in the entry process that you can view, and I encourage you to do that. But before I click on live entry status, I'm also going to take you to my account. And this is where you will be able to set up payment information and understand what your payment obligations are in terms of deposits and such. If you had a credit from the 2020 race, it would show up here in my account overview. There's not going to be a credit in. Oh, look, there is a credit in here. This is already loaded because we just copied the database over to the sandbox. So here you'd see your credit from the 2020 race. Here you'd see the bookings for the new race. And you can also set up a payment process, which is now not available in the sandbox site, where you can auto pay or pay manually any of your due amounts. All right, I'm going to go back to races. And
so Andrew, just to talk about payments and auto pay, what would you recommend? Auto pay?
I'd recommend auto pay. What auto pay, which you'll see that option on soon after you enter on Friday. What auto pay allows you to do is set up your payment information, and then on the due dates when payments are due, it's automatically paid. It allows you to just set it and forget it. Set it and forget it. We don't take your money in ahead of the due dates. But then you don't have to worry about remembering when to pay as well. So
or any late fees.
Correct.
Right.
So I'm going to go back into live entry status, and we'll view where we are. So this is basically your dashboard to see what your progress is. And here's your account information. You can see all the information that you have entered so far. You can amend boat information directly from in here. You can use the contact tools in here. The most important thing to continue with right away is offshore experience form. And you'll see there's these icons that indicate where you are in the process. So in this case, it's not yet complete. Everyone has to complete at least an initial offshore experience form. Whether you've raced the race 10 times or never raced before, you have to complete this initial offshore experience form, which just collects information about your past experience in Newport, Bermuda. If you've had sufficient, you and your navigator have had sufficient recent Newport Bermuda race experience, you'd enter it here and you'd automatically be qualified for an invitation. If not, you'll be directed to fill out a more extensive offshore experience form. But you have to go through this process in order to even qualify for the automatic invitation. So please don't forget this first step. Complete this information. You may be directed to an extended response form if it's your first race. All right, I'm gonna cancel this and proceed on to some other steps. This edit trophies form will be for later in the cycle, where you can sign up for special trophies associated with the race. Here's an inspection election form. If you raced in 28, there's some rules about inspections. Most of the time, inspections are required. If you have had sufficient recent experience and you have the same boat, same ownership, you can elect to self-inspect. There's some very specific requirements for that, and I encourage you to look those up in the NOR. And then when the time comes, you'll be able to submit ORR information and certificate information. You'll be prompted to do that when the time comes. Let's proceed now back to, so this is getting the boat and your entry process, but it doesn't say anything about crew yet. So let's get into crew. So once you've got your boat entered, you've entered the race, you've started going through the rest of the offshore experience requirements, and you're now into the invitation phase. You've been invited to the race. You'll receive an email from us about invitation to complete your entry. That would be a good time to start thinking about your crew. So click on crew, click on your boat, and you can see the race that we've entered, and now manage crew list. We encourage you to do this as early in the process as you have the ability to do in terms of securing your crew. The earlier you get started with a fixed crew list, the earlier you will know where you stand in terms of deficiencies, in terms of offshore training, medical training, etc. And also qualifications based on world sailing professional status. So we encourage you to get crew lists established early in the process if you can. So now I would click add. And this is where, if you've been a previous entrant on Sailgate, you might have people in your address book that raced with you before, and you can add them to your crew. And you can just go through and add more. And I'm just going to add 2 or 3 people here. and you're already yourself, you're already in the crew list, of course. As soon as you add yourself to the crew list, you're going to be obligated to sign the crew waiver. Your crew, when you invite them, will be presented with this crew waiver when they accept the invitation through the email process. So I'm going to say, oh my gosh. I don't know what I've missed here. There we go. Okay, and then you can come in here and you can assign roles. So any of these, crew members that you've added, you can come and assign a role to. So I can add any of these roles to these people. There's a couple of roles that are critical to add, so I encourage you to take the time to go through and assign roles for some of your crew. Once you've created your crew list and assigned your roles, you're going to want to send invitations. Once you send these invitations, emails will go out to all of them. That's their formal invitation to click and accept and come back to Sailgate, sign their waiver, enter any of their offshore experience or claimed medical training information, and now they become associated with your crew, and their qualifications also get counted towards your crew. So this process of adding and inviting crew members is very critical, and we encourage you to do it as early in the process as you can. All of that information, once they're added, will again show up in live entry status, and you'll see a crew table down here. Here are the few crew members that I added. You'll see the crew members, and you'll see whether or not they've completed the required information that they need to complete and how many of the various offshore qualifications or claimed medical trainings you have for your crew. This is a really important piece of the live entry status page because it tells you as you get closer to the race date if you're going to actually qualify to do on-site registration because you now have the proper training and offshore experience.
Right. Andrew, let's go back again. We had a question from somebody. If they filled out the extended experience form when they in 2020, do they have to do that again for 2022 if they were approved?
They do. Unfortunately, because we didn't complete the race, we're not using 2020 as part of the past experience. So unfortunately, you're going to have to complete that process again. Perhaps you've saved it and you can just copy and paste. But yes, we've that database from 2020 in terms of the submitted information is cleaned, and you'll have to enter that again.
Right. And if anybody has any trouble with any of this, it's yourselves to contact at info@bermudarace.com, correct?
That's correct. Once you've submitted your that extended offshore experience form, that goes directly to the qualifications committee, and you'd end up having a dialogue with them about the qualifications specifically. But if you had questions about the process, yeah, info@bermudarace.com, and I'd handle that.
Yeah, great. Okay, so we'll carry forth.
Carry forth. Well, that's basically the completion of that process in terms of the key elements. I'll go back to imagine you're a crew member yourself, which of course as an entrant you likely are. Your specific information in terms of offshore experience, medical, etc., you would find under settings and miscellaneous. This is where you get to enter your qualifications for medical training and offshore. So all your crew members will be able to add the same thing here. So when they sign into Sailgate, they'll see a similar menu on the left. They won't have boats and races, but they'll have this ability in settings to enter their information. For all entrants sailing in divisions that have limitations on professional sailors, which by memory is St. David's, Finisterre, maybe that's it. I think there's one more. You see this ISAF sailor ID category. An ISAF sailor ID is going to be critical because without the ISAF sailor ID, we cannot look up automatically your sailor classification. And without sailor classification, you're not considered a Group 1 sailor.
Which is amateur, yes. Group
Yes.
1 is amateur.
You wouldn't be considered an amateur unless we can look up and validate that you have been considered that by World Sailing. So early on in the process, we do encourage captains to make sure that their crew members all get a World Sailing ID, all seek a classification that's valid through the race, and enter that information here. If they don't, they're going to be considered non-amateurs, in which case you might have a problem qualifying for the division that you've entered if there's limitations on professional sailors. So this is, again, really important stuff to get going on early in the process.
And it's good to delineate that you have to go to sailing.org to go get your classification ID. And that's a separate process from the race. But that ID does get used by the race to validate who's a professional and who's an amateur.
Indeed, that's true. And for those who are entering and where your classification status may be questioned, like perhaps you're involved in the industry in some way and you're not sure whether you're going to be a Category 1 or Classification 1 or Classification 3 sailor, that process can take some time to get your valid classification. So you don't want to wait late in the process to do it, because you may end up beyond the point where beyond the crew deadline, and you may end up not getting the qualification that you want.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a top tip of, for skippers to make sure that they get their crews to sort this out early. Classifications, if I recall, last for, is it 2 years or is it longer?
That's a good question. I think it's just 1 year, but I could be wrong on that. Hopefully it's 2 years, but I think it's 1. And either way, you go to World Sailing and you can check it out, because you can just enter your ISAF sailor ID and it'll tell you what your classification is and when it expires.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so this is the page, it's under Sailing Miscellaneous or Settings Miscellaneous, where you enter this information, and all crew need to do that. And they must also enter emergency contact information. Again, if they haven't done this, it'll show up on your that live entry status page for all of your crew. If you haven't invited your crew, this is the critical point. If you haven't invited your crew, you are blind to whether or not they've taken care of any of these things. So by delaying inviting crew and ensuring that all crew have accepted your invitation and are showing on your live entry status portal, you're going to be blind to whether or not they are in compliance or not, or they have a valid training certificate or not, or a valid ISAF classification or not. So the earliest you can get the invitations out to all your crew members and get them completing their information, the less stress there will be as we approach race date.
So just to clarify, these when a captain issues an invitation to crew members, that is going via email, and it's going to be coming from entry@bermudarace.com.
That's right. It comes right out of the Sailgate system, and I believe it comes from entry@bermudarace.com, and it has instructions and links that if they click that link, they'll be taken back to Sailgate to register an account if they've not had one before, or log into their account, accept the waiver, and then they become joined to your crew on Sailgate, and you'll see them in your list as accepted crew.
Right, and you're going to want, captains are going to want to make sure that their crew have entry@bermudarace.com set up to be received in their email, and not just go straight to spam if that's,
Yeah, they'll miss some critical emails, and especially those invitations. You can resend invitations, but you need to take them off your crew list, add them back to your crew list to resend invitations. So it's possible, but yeah, you might alert them to expect that, but the only way to get them to join your crew in Sailgate is to actually use that invitation process. You can't tell them independently to go to Sailgate and sign up, because they'll never be connected to your boat without the invitation process.
Okay.
Hey, Andrew,
And-
this is Kate here. I just
Sure.
went to the sailing.org website while we were all talking, and it says they're actually working through a new system right now. So they have a temporary system, and it's going to take a little bit longer. So even more to maybe harp on people trying to renew, because I just went to go check my own, and my own expired because I bet a lot of people expired in the last year when they didn't need to do, when they weren't sailing probably quite as much. So
That's a great point. I did hear that they were working on that system. I believed it was still live, and it may be. But yes, certainly, again, to reiterate the point, the earlier the better that those classifications are set up. You're going to be in much better shape. Trying to sort this out in the last 2 weeks before the race is a really bad idea
Top tip.
for everybody.
Yeah, for everybody involved.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Does that,
that's the quick tour.
yeah.
Any other questions that pop up from, because I'm not seeing the chat right now.
So far, we've been able to answer most of them. There was one question that said, and I'm not sure if this really is for you, but what, if anything, has changed with registration or requirements to the race from 2020? I did put a link to the official notice board where the new MBR SRs have been posted. I believe there's not a lot of changes, but it's always pertinent to go through and make sure you're reading the latest.
Yeah. The official notice board is always the latest and greatest.
Right. Yeah, in terms of the entry process, I don't believe there are any changes. A slight change in fees, but the schedule is very similar. And the process is almost identical to what we used in 2020.
Right. And I think you covered it early on in the process, but for people that are re-entering from last year's or last cycle's race when it was canceled, if they are re-entering, obviously using the same credentials that they had the last time, then a credit for their deposit will be posted in their account, which is helpful for 2022.
Yeah. Right. And they'll see that even before they enter the race. They'll see a credit in there.
Right.
Once they enter, they'll see and the credit should be, if they use auto pay, I believe the credit should be applied to whatever deposit amount they're to pay. So you'll just have a small net difference between 2022 fees and 2020 fees that you're
Right.
able to pay.
Okay.
Andrew, this is Dick Holiday. Do I understand that a boat will be under this sailgate system? A boat will be invited to enter maybe long before it has presented sufficient crew experience to ultimately complete the entry.
So yes, I'll give you a little bit of a brief on the qualifications process. Our qualifications committee has decided that if the captain and the navigator have raced in either of the two previous races, which would be in our case 2018 and 2016, in their respective roles. So it doesn't even have to be on the same boat. If you raced as a captain in 2018 or 2016 and your navigator raced as a navigator in 2018 and 2016, when you fill out that original form, it'll be captured that way. It'll be indicated to me that that claim was made. I just go validate that by looking in the databases for 2016 and 2018. And if that's the case, you'll get an automatic invitation to continue your entry. If that's not the case, either you don't claim that you had that experience in 2016 or 2018, or you claimed it, but for instance, your navigator wasn't listed as navigator on a roster in 2016 or 2018, then you will be asked to complete the more extended offshore experience form that then qualifications committee manually reviews. And then they communicate to me whether or not that crew is, that entry is qualified to receive an invitation to continue their entry. The information asked in that extended form could include, well, certainly will include captain's information, offshore experience, navigator, and watch captains, and could go deeper than that depending upon what the qualifications committee feels would be appropriate. So that becomes a bit subjective as to how much additional information you need to supply to qualifications before they communicate, yep, they're good to go. And then I would issue the invitation to complete your entry. Did that answer that question, Dick?
Yes, thanks.
Sure.
Hey guys, thanks for doing this. Quick question. I'm looking at my Sailgate portal, and it says that under the Newport Bermuda race, it says that the opening date is June 18th, but you guys and the website, the Bermuda race website, says June 17th. Is that just a mistake on the Sailgate portal?
Well, we're opening Friday at 1300.
Gotcha,
So
okay.
I believe the Sailgate portal might be right. I have to look at a calendar right now to see what, just to make sure that we got the right date on the website, but.
Gotcha. Okay, maybe I misread it previously.
Yeah.
It says that the race starts June 17th, 2022.
2022, right?
Registration opens June
Okay.
18th, 2021.
Thanks for clarifying.
Does anyone else have any questions that they want to raise that are in attendance today, and we can try and make sure that we answer them?
There's a
Otherwise,
question, can we get the extended experience form in advance of registration?
I can share, maybe I can share the link to that. Hold on a second. Let me take a peek here as to whether or not this is going to go to the right form. I'm on the Sandbox site and I don't know whether the link to the current form is there, but I could tell in a moment. This is correct. So you could go to this form. I would encourage you to wait, just because the information that you enter, I mean, as long as your sail number is clear and your yacht name is clear and your name and your email address are the email address that you're going to use for your Sailgate account, they need to match, because otherwise we don't know how to relate your form entry information for Offshore Experience to your Sailgate entry. So you might wait until you've created your account. If you've already created your Sailgate account, yes, you could go in and complete this. I don't know how to effectively give you that link that's highlighted on my screen, and you probably don't want to try to copy it down. But as soon as you enter the race, you'll be able to go to live entry status page and find that Offshore Experience form, and the link will be right there. So you could technically go and fill this out now, but I would encourage you to just wait until your entry is completed and then fill it out. And that way you're sure to fill it out with information that allows us to connect the form to your entry.
right.
Anything else?
If there's nothing else that you really think that crews or skippers need to see about the Sailgate system, I guess we can just wrap this webinar up. And thank you for giving us an insight into Sailgate. I've learned a few things this evening, and I hope everyone else has. That's going to be all for us today. We are planning to do some more webinars later in the fall, once the entry process is well underway, and to help answer any questions that competitors have with the entry process, you'll be reaching out to Andrew at info@bermudarace.com. And we look forward to welcoming everybody to the 2022 race. So good luck on Friday when the system opens, and reach out to Andrew if you have any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Summers.